All right, let's move on and talk about the FCS as we always do every Wednesday. A true wild card, Steve. And again, first top two teams out of the Missouri Valley, and both of them have losses. I talk about it over and over again. Montana won again, but they're still sitting at number 3. Number 1 goes to the North Dakota State Bisons, and South Dakota State Jackrabbits at number 2. We talked about it on Friday or Saturday. I can't remember which one, but we talked about the North Dakota State versus Youngstown State game. North Dakota State wins 27-14 in that one. They remained the number 1 team in the country. Pretty good game, though, for sure.
I think it's different in the FCS than it is in the FBS. I'm a big believer. Hey, the FBS, I'm always screaming. If you're undefeated, you need to be above any team with a loss. In the FCS, quite often, either you're playing FBS teams in the first couple of weeks, so you can expect a loss, or over time, the cream rises to the top. So you watch, let's say, a North Dakota State who really eliminated any offensive game from Youngstown State. Youngstown State not ranked at the moment, but they're a traditional FCS power. You look at that, and you look at just overall the depth of that team. They had some pretty key injuries at key positions, and they did miss a beat, and they put up some late scores. So I think North Dakota State, it's going to be a matter of, Montana's going to have to beat them.
That's fair. And that makes perfect sense because we've seen in the past how great that Bison's team is. And I know that you shouldn't put rankings based on past performances, especially in years past, especially in college football. But in this case, I feel like there is a little bit of bias in there, but they are proving that they deserve to be at the top spot. That loss is against an FBS school, understandable. Got you. One of the games that I'm interested in, I know you're going to want to talk about Missouri Valley and Big Sky because those are the conferences that really deserve the credit. But I was talking to you earlier today when I was looking through the new top 25, and the one that really caught my eye was William and Mary against Delaware. And I think that game is going to be very entertaining. And the Colonials, no joke this year.
No, I don't think it's really a joke any year as far as the balance. I think throughout that conference, I think it's always a very well-balanced conference. Every conference always has that team that's having the bad year. But really, you have 2 come up and then you have 2 fall down to the bottom. Delaware is always good. William and Mary, I think, has done a nice job with their program. I would be shocked if one of the teams, if not both of those teams, don't make the FCS playoffs. That's how highly I think of them. If everything has to fall right in some of the other conferences.
Mm-hmm.
But they're well coached. They're very disciplined teams, both. And that's something you see in the Colonial. There are some FCS conferences where it's more wide open and maybe it's more haphazard kind of play. Teams in the Colonial know, okay, let's just play a disciplined game. Let's not turn the ball over. If we do that, we're going to have a chance to win any game, even the teams in the lower tier. So it'll be interesting. I mean, I like Delaware a lot in this game, but that's not dismissing William and Mary by any stretch. I mean, I've really been impressed with what they have done this year so far.
Yeah, Delaware's already 3-0 in the Colonial with their 5-0 record. Again, another undefeated team, only ranked 6th in the nation. I think if they can defeat William and Mary, who's ranked 17th, we're talking 2 top 25 teams going at it in the FCS. Delaware deserves to get moved up a little bit. Definitely some thought to keep in mind on that one. I do really like what Delaware has done as well. But of course, my bias here, can't count out the tribe, little William and Mary love from only living about an hour south of the tribe. All right, what else you got with the Missouri Valley and the Big Sky? Because I know you're dying to talk about it.
Well, I think that's where all eyes need to be. We're talking about Delaware and or William and Mary perhaps getting into the playoffs, but really the better teams are all in the Missouri Valley and the Big Sky. I did not look as closely at the schedules there. I was actually focused on the teams in the Eastern conferences this week as I was looking ahead to our Friday and Saturday shows, coming up with the Misfit game, which we'll unveil on Saturday. So I haven't looked at the schedules in depth, but I don't see any stumbling blocks for any of the Missouri Valley and Big Sky teams that are in the top 10 now. And basically they pretty much dominate, the FCS top 10. It'll be interesting to see which of those teams stumble first. Because once they do, they're out of the national title consideration, really. So it'll be interesting. I think Montana is going to try to do things to put themselves more seriously in the conversation.
Mhm.
You and I really like Montana, but I think they have to have a true statement game. I don't want to call it, say it, a run up the score kind of a game, but but they have to have that kind of a win
Mhm.
to get themselves. And what I find so interesting is that North Dakota State, obviously number one, gets the most first place votes. South Dakota State is not getting first place votes. Now they may have in this poll. I didn't look at it that closely, but I know the week before they hadn't gotten any first place votes, and all the other first place votes are going to Montana.
Yeah,
So
I noticed that too. I noticed that too, and I thought that was interesting. But they still sat at number 3,
yeah,
which I thought was interesting.
so are the voters dropping them further down on their ballots? The non-Western Conference ones, the Eastern Conference coaches, are
Mhm.
they just going, as you said, based on past performance? Because they're not really having to play them. They're not really looking at film or anything. Are they just kind of overlooking Montana and just focusing on the because North Dakota State, South Dakota State, they really are the crown princes, I think, of the FCS, at least over the last couple of years. I mean, I'm an Ivy League guy, but none of the teams in the Ivy match up with any of the teams really in either of those two conferences. So I don't understand polls. That's why I don't really like polls. It's one of the few times I wish there could just be a straight formula. Where you rank them. Basically, it's 1 through 25, and where you are in certain categories, that gets you points. I don't know what the answer to that is. It's not like these writers in other markets and other conferences don't have access to the games anymore.
Right.
Before, even 5 years ago, that was very much the case. But I mean, I and you and I could have probably watched every significant FCS game
Mhm.
on Saturday.
Certainly. Certainly. Sounds like something maybe Slasher you might want to look into a Slasher U poll, if you will, based on some analytical stats. I think that might be something you and I might have to do on the side here. Maybe we'll have a chat after this podcast. Montana
Okay.
did have a 28-20 win at Idaho State last week. They are in a bye, and then they go face Idaho, which was an FBS team at one time. They made the drop to FCS. Could be an interesting game. That could be a game, like you said, that maybe Montana tries to do something big and gets hurt for it. So I'm interested to see what happens on that one. But right now, they are leading the Big Sky.